So welcome to Trust Lab Colloquium. We're happy to have Dr. Varun Narayanan today. Varun actually was an MTech student here way back in the electrical engineering department, and since then he did a PhD at TIFR, where he kind of transitioned from information theory to cryptography full time now, I guess. And he's a postdoc at Technion in Haifa, and where he was hosted by Yuval Lisha and Eyal Kushlowitz, and he's going to talk about work from there, which was published at Crypto this year. And after this, he's on his way to UCLA for another postdoc. So, thanks.
Thanks, Manoj. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'll be presenting our work on layered MPC. We are building perfectly secure MPC in this model, the so-called layered MPC model. This is a joint work with Bernardo, Yuval, Anders, and Eyal. So feel free to stop me at any point and clear up any doubts you might have. It's always easier to present when it is interactive. So let me first begin by describing what a layered MPC is and put our result in a very informal sense before we get into the motivations and so on. So what is layered MPC? We have a communication network that looks like a multipartite graph. And each node in this graph is a party. And the communication in this network, communication network, is from the left to right. So we'll call each of these partition as a layer. So there's layer 0, layer 1 up to layer D over here. It's a depth D multipartite graph. And now what is the problem? The parties in the layer 0, these we will call the input clients, and the parties in the layer D, the last layer, we will call it the output clients. Now the input clients have inputs x1 up to xn, let's say x1 up to x4 here, and the output clients want to compute some function of all these inputs. These could be potentially different for each of these output clients. Now we want to compute this function by having communication, by running a communication protocol over this network. So first of all, note that the parties that are appearing in this network, they are actually distinct. They are not the same. No party is persisting across the network. And so we want to build a protocol so that this particular functionality of this the output clients getting the correct output is realized. Now, of course, like in the standard setting, there is an adversary who is allowed to corrupt some of these parties, but we have a certain rule that in each layer the adversary is allowed to corrupt at most T parties. Over here we can see the adversary corrupting 1 out of the 4 parties. And then the question that we are asking is whether layered MPC is feasible in the malicious setting with T security. So malicious means that the adversary can arbitrarily, the parties who are corrupted by the adversary can arbitrarily behave and not follow the protocol and so on. And when the question is whether we can compute the functions with T security in this model. Our main result here is showing that indeed they can compute any function that they want with T security against a malicious adversary, as long as T is less than n by 3. That is, if at most if less than n by 3 parties are corrupted in each layer, then every function can be computed in this model. This is the question. Yeah, so okay, I forgot this particular. There's a crucial point, we will see why it is there. It turns out that we necessarily require that not only can these parties communicate over this network, but they also have a broadcast channel available. That is, a party can broadcast a message to the next layer. Okay, so what could be the challenges that we will come across? First of all, note that the parties are not persisting. So every party is essentially speaking only once. and of course the parties cannot talk further into the future. So this is what makes the coming up of the protocol interesting. But note that the result that we get, that at most, as long as the number of corruption is less than n/3, we get MPC. This is in some sense tight, because even if the parties persist, this corruption threshold is necessary. Yeah, in each layer the adversary is allowed to corrupt at most T parties. So this particular result will go through if the parties are allowed to corrupt arbitrarily many parties in the input and output layers. But in between, yes, we can show that it is impossible if even one of these layers is corrupted for more than T/3. Yeah, we will see it as we go along. So what is the motivation for this strange looking model? So let's start by looking at the standard definition of secure multi-party computation. Here there are a set of parties, and they all have some private inputs that they want to compute a combined function of. So the party 1 may want to compute some f1 of x1 to x4, and party 2 f2 of x2 to x4, and so on. And the question is, can they come up with a communication protocol over this network? This is a network of secure peer-to-peer links, and there is no broadcast involved over here, and they want to come up with a protocol that securely computes this function when, let's say, T of these parties can be corrupted by the adversary. And over here there is a classic result that says that any function can be computed, that is MPC is feasible with T security if T is less than n/3 in the malicious setting. And note that here there is no question of broadcast requirement showing up. Remember, in our model we needed a broadcast. And in the semi-honest model, which is a simpler setting, the adversary is much weaker. Over here you can do MPC when T is less than n/2. So this is kind of in some sense limiting, because if you note, the adversary is only allowed to corrupt a set of T parties throughout the run of the protocol. But if you look at a more real scenario, then it's possible that the adversary is able to corrupt some of the parties, and then these corruptions are detected, and then the adversary goes ahead and corrupts some other parties as the protocol proceeds. So the most aggressive way in which adversary can corrupt is, in each round of the protocol the adversary is allowed to corrupt T parties. So this means that if the adversary wants to jump from a set of T parties to another set of T parties between 2 rounds, then the adversary has to give up some of the corruptions. This is like saying that the adversary left that party, so rather the corruption of that particular party has been detected and the party has been reset. So when we uncorrupt a party across rounds, the view of this party has been reset in some sense.
State of that adversary
yeah, so if you realize that you have been part of some kind of a virus infection, then your best strategy at the moment is to delete your entire view and start again, because you don't know, or you can't trust the view anymore. Yeah. So think of it as like a fresh party. So over here, the paper that brought up the model, they introduced the model, showed that there is a constant, C strictly greater than 0. This has to be strictly greater than 3, because otherwise we know it's tight, for which security holds in this model whenever T is less than n/3. So in each round, adversary is allowed to corrupt T parties. In this setting you can get MPC. However, the later work started considering the question of like talking about T corruptions in an epoch. An epoch could be like several rounds together. You want to ensure that in K rounds the adversary is only allowed to corrupt T parties and so on. So at that point the interest was, we acknowledged, they acknowledged that the adversary could move around, but the interest was to make the protocol more efficient. So usually the model will have this general framework, that is, in an epoch initially, in an epoch the parties will compute and then they will reshare the view, so that when the adversary goes to corrupt a new fresh set of T parties, they can't like collect the shares from the earlier corruption and the new corruption to figure out the entire view in the protocol. So you compute and reshare. So an epoch will look like the second half of the previous reshare, followed by compute, followed by the first half of the the next reshare. So as we noted, the most aggressive situation is where the adversary is allowed to corrupt T potentially fresh parties in every round. Now another motivation for
Varun.
Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Hi Varun, I am Meena. I'm working in TCS Innovation Labs.
Hi, Meena.
So thanks for the talk. So I have a question here. So in this diagram, if I understand, T parties, T corrupt parties. So these three are among the people who give inputs, right?
Yeah. So here there's no fresh party. This N parties are persisting entire protocol. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to your first slide where you show the network.
Yeah.
In that, what I understand.
Yeah.
In this, the T parties, you had put red circles, right?
Yes. So here you see the only constraint that we put on the adversary is that you can corrupt at most T parties in each layer.
Right. So the difference here, I understand, is that here the T party is not all the parties contributing input. Right?
No. The corrupt party can also contribute to the
central network, like my doubt is the central network, do they aggregate and forward? That's what I understand from the diagram. So what is the role of that? They are not giving any inputs, right?
Over here or in the other setting?
Yeah, in this. Yeah, in this.
Yeah. You should think of these as some kind of helping parties, but they are constrained in their communication in this weird manner.
So what is the role of this 1 to n-1 network? Like?
Yeah, they are helping. Of course, if you had put these clients right next to these output clients, then you cannot do secure computation. So you would expect that there is several of these layers between the input and output clients, and they could somehow help you do the computation. So these should be thought of as helpers in some sense.
But they will not be contributing to your inputs.
They would not be, they do not have by themselves any inputs.
Right.
Yeah.
They forward it.
They forward it, they do some computation. So they get the messages from all these parties, they do some computation, and then they forward it to the next layer.
One more question on this diagram itself. See, you have kept around n-1 layers. So is there any relationship between the layers and the number of parties?
So in each layer there are n parties, out of which you are allowed to corrupt T parties.
Okay, and you have n-1 layers as well?
No. The number of layers is some D, which is, so you will later realize that the D is going to depend on how complex the function is that we are trying to compute.
Okay.
So you should think of this that, so these are the parties who have inputs and these are the parties who have outputs, and these parties in the layer, they are being recruited to help them compute securely.
So essentially they'll be doing some secure aggregation and forwarding broadcasting to n-1 parties.
The thing is that these parties can also be corrupt, right? So a secure aggregation might not be possible, because if this party had been sent the input of this particular party, then we breach security right away.
Okay.
So so by security we mean like an almost intuitive notion, in the sense that what is security against an adversary? We want to ensure that the adversary does not learn anything in addition to what it has learned from the input and output of the parties that they are corrupting. So specifically in this model, So you see that the party with x4 as input and the party with f1 as output have been corrupted, right? So this adversary should only learn whatever they can infer from the input, the values of x4 and f1, and nothing else. So for example, the adversary should not learn like x1 in the clear, because that will break security. Meena is yeah.
So you said that in this model.
In the previous, yeah, this model.
So
Yeah.
the corrupted parties may be reset in the future.
In the future, yeah.
So that's why you want broadcast over there, because you can't share the states. Because if you share the states, will be broadcasted and everyone will know that you're kind of lying. What's it more?
Yeah, I mean, so we would see that in this model, when the adversary is allowed to run around really fast, broadcast is impossible even with one party being corrupted. In each round, if you are allowed to corrupt one party in each round, then broadcast is impossible.
No,
It turns out.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
connect this picture to the other picture image. You said that over here, the corrupted parties can be uncorrupted, so that state will be reset. You can't like share that state to the next round adversary or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
since you
So-
have broadcast
so-
over there,
Yeah.
that's again not possible. You kind of almost have this similar, almost the same.
So in some sense, if you think of this model where the adversary is allowed to corrupt T parties in each round, you're almost, I mean, so why is this a motivation? Because this model, so any protocol in that model can be thought of as a protocol in this model. Yeah. This is the motivation for thinking about that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so note that here the parties are allowed to persist. They're persisting through rounds. But then in some sense the parties are getting their views deleted potentially. But if you build a protocol over there, it should work here as well. I mean, there are some nuances with respect to rushing, but we are not thinking about that right now. So think of like, so when the adversary corrupts a party in round 1 and another party in round 2, then the adversary only sees the messages that are sent by round 1, this party in round 1, and the received by this party in round 2. That's all. Yeah. So the reason why the layered MPC is interesting, the reason why this is a motivation for layered MPC is that any protocol in the layered MPC would solve the maximally, malicious proactive MPC setting, where each round T parties are allowed to corrupt. Now, another motivation for this model that has been introduced very recently called YOSO, or you only speak once. So this model was inspired by having to do computation in a blockchain. So the parties here are ephemeral. That is, the constraint here is that a party needs to only speak once. So the party might join the MPC protocol at some point, receives a bunch of view that it is supposed to have, and then does a computation and sends it over, and it's out of the game altogether. So over here, the constraint is that you only speak once. So at any point of time in the MPC, there's going to be one or a bunch of committees that are active. The committees receive a bunch of messages from the previous committees, and they compute some messages and sends it forth to the committees in the future. There's a lot of things happening in the background that ensures that in each committee T parties can be at most T parties can be corrupted. But if we keep that part aside, then here also the situation is that the parties speak only once, and in each committee at most T people will be corrupted. So in this model, what has been studied is secure computation in the statistical setting. And you know that in the statistical setting, this is feasible as long as T is less than n by 2 with broadcast and so on. So the question that is open here is that of perfect MPC. So clearly over here also, I mean, if you think about it, this is a directed graph and layered MPC is a path, so path between these committees in some sense. So as a result, any protocol over there would imply a protocol over here in the YOSO as well. So these are the two motivations. I mean, there's a third motivation, which is like a model called fluid MPC, which does the exact model as the layered MPC. It was called a slightly different name. And over there, the previous result was trying to realize statistically secure MPC with abort. And in Crypto 2023, there's a concurrent work by the same team that tries to do MPC with perfect security, and they get the same result. So, yeah. So these are the motivations. Do you have any questions about this? So I hope that the motivations are clear. So the point is that layered MPC tries to solve each of these models.
So basically jumping ahead, in
Yeah.
terms of efficiency, how does YOSO protocol and
The YOSO protocol, in the paper, they don't care too much about the efficiency. I mean, there is a computationally secure variant and a statistically secure variant. Statistically secure variant was done only as like a proof of work or something, but it's the main part of the paper. And over there, they just ensure that it's efficient. So over here, in our case also, we are going to see the extremely inefficient version, but all the tricks that we use there can be used to get an efficient version, because we are going to use CNF VSS, or like the duplicated VSS, the one that is highly inefficient, but you can replace it with Shamir with some slight extra tricks, and you will get, all the things would be here is the plan. So yeah, so this is the motivation. Is it possible to construct MPC with ephemeral servers that are going away after one appearance, using ephemeral, achieving perfect full security against a maximally mobile adversary, that is like adversary can move around as much as they want, while maintaining the optimal corruption threshold. This is the optimal corruption threshold because even in the standard setting where the adversary is like made to stay put, you can only afford the corruption to be less than n by 3. Yeah, that's true. But then if you, if you get a protocol with more than n by 3 corruptions here, it would imply a protocol over there. Yeah.
Can afford some fraction of it. Maybe imagine a protocol that's secure against say, a total of.
Yeah, absolutely. This is true.
Layer only say.
Yes. This is not refuted, but we will see that this is not possible. I mean, it's not. So we will see that this is not possible by. This is just a formal description of the MPC, the inputs and the outputs, and I hope that this part is clear. These parties can be thought of as servers. So there is the client-server kind of model, but we have now several layers of servers. But the communication is very restricted, and each party can broadcast to the next layer. So yeah, this is like pretty much what I was saying. So now let's see what are the main clear differences between standard MPC and layered MPC. In the semi-honest setting, there's no difference, more or less. I mean, as in, it's easy to get a layered MPC from the standard MPC. You can take the BGW protocol, that's the classic protocol, and with maybe some slight amount of sanitization of the protocol, you get a protocol in the layered MPC. This is easy to do. So semi-honest means the corrupt parties are not behaving arbitrarily. But interestingly, note that in the standard setting, the specific function of broadcast, that is, a party has an input, every other party should get the same message as the output. In the malicious setting, this is feasible in the standard setting whenever T is less than n by 3. T parties are corrupted. It turns out that in the layered MPC, this broadcast is not possible. So by which I mean, there is an input client with a message, and there should be an output client much later potentially with several layers of servers in between, with the final layer getting the same message. Everybody gets the same message. This is impossible even when T is equal to 1. That is, in each layer, at most T, one party is allowed to be corrupt.
What does it mean the servers should not learn the message?
No, there's no need. There's no secrecy because the adversary could have corrupted one of the output clients and could have learned. Even that, we are not asking for security against a adversary who's corrupting only the service. This is impossible, and showing this is a little tedious, but then it follows with the same line of argument that is used to show that you need T+1 rounds of T+1 round protocol to get security against T corrupted, against T corruptions in the model where there are like signed messages. That's what we're saying. So broadcast cannot be done if you don't have broadcast. If you have broadcast, you can always do broadcast. But if you do not have, but if you have broadcast, it turns out that you get the tightest result possible. That is, in MPC, you know that T less than n by 3 is allowed.
This is for broadcast or?
This is for general MPC. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the primitive broadcast is impossible to realize in the layered setting, even for the weakest corruption threshold. But assuming the broadcast, you can get general MPC with the same threshold as in the standard MPC.
Assuming if a given broadcast has a
Yeah.
But you can't build one.
You can the earlier case. Broadcast is feasible, so it doesn't matter whether.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So let's start with the most basic functionality that we could require in this thing when we want to build something. Okay, so here we have a network and there is a sender in the layer 0, and the sender wants to send a message to a particular receiver in a later layer, like layer 4 or something. Of course, what is the property that we need? When the sender and the receiver are honest, the message should not be learned by the adversary who corrupts T parties in each layer. So the simplest problem, what if the sender is in one layer and the receiver is in the next layer? Of course, there is a secure peer-to-peer channel between them, so they can send it over this channel. Now consider the case where the sender is in the layer 0 and the receiver is in the layer 2. So I'm sure that you're comfortable with the secret sharing. So over here, when T is less than n by 3, we have a simple scheme. So what is the idea? The sender will secret share the message onto the layer 1, and then the parties in the layer 1 will simply forward the secret shared message to the receiver. Now, if at most T parties are corrupt here, by property of Shamir secret sharing, this party should be able to reconstruct it by correcting the errors. So this party might send an S2 prime, but you can still recover, and the parties over here do not learn the message because it has been secret shared. Now you can recursively build a protocol for even longer communication. So the idea is that the sender wants to send a message to the receiver over here. Sender first takes a secret sharing of the message, S1, S2, S3, S4, and then the sender sends S1 to this party, S2 to this party, and so on. And these parties now do a future messaging from here to here with this as input, and this should go through. Now, so everything is fine as long as the sender is not corrupt. When the sender is corrupt, there's no meaning for the functionality of secure messaging because the sender is allowed to choose whatever message, and then we can make the sender choose the message that the receiver received and so on. But then this creates all sorts of problems when we have when we are parallelly calling several future messaging functionalities together. So the thing to be observed here is that the sender does not commit to a message after this round is over. The sender gets control over the message until the very last round. So sender can potentially choose the message that it wants to this receiver until this point. Like
closing.
Okay, until this point. Okay, so what are the issues this would cause? So let's consider the question of like parallel communication in the usual model. This is what we would think of as rushing. So suppose there are two parties in layer 1 and two parties in layer 2, I mean layer 0 and layer 1, and one of them is corrupted here and one of them is corrupted here. So then you see that this party, I mean, so the message that this party sends can be correlated with the message that this party sends. So this is basically rushing. I mean, so what you are not doing is a functionality in which, so what you cannot realize in this setting is a functionality that takes messages from both the senders and then delivers the messages to both the receivers. Because in that case, this party could not have made their message equal to this party's message. But here you can. What you do is you wait for this party to receive the message, figure out what that message is, and then send it over here by rushing a little bit, rushing between these things. Interestingly, in our setting, you can rush across several layers. This is because, so suppose there are two senders and two receivers. One of the senders is corrupt and one of the receivers is corrupt. So the message sent by an honest sender to the honest receiver, to a corrupt receiver, when the receiver learns this particular message, the adversary can go and tamper things around over here to make the message to the honest receiver from the corrupt sender to be equal to this message. So the takeaway is that so parallel invocations of these things are hard to talk about the security of. So potentially the message that is being sent from a sender here to the receiver here could be correlated with all sorts of things that the parties over here could have learned in the bigger protocol. So this makes proving the security of this trickier by building like tedious hybrids over like several steps and so on. So, but that being said, the future messaging gives you a few more primitives for free. One is future broadcast. What do we mean by future broadcast? There is a sender, and the sender wants to send the same message to all the receivers in a certain future layer. So if we use the future messaging several times, this cannot be arranged for, right? Because the sender could send different messages across. So all the parties don't agree on the same message. But then what you can potentially do is, in the very last layer, you just broadcast the messages to everybody. So the parties in the middle do not get to learn, but this last set of parties will output the same message because they are getting the same view out of this. Another interesting thing that we would use quite a lot of is called conditional disclosure. So the sender wants to send something to a party in this layer, in an output client, but only if certain conditions are met. So maybe there is some check going on in parallel, and if the check fails, then we want to force the sender to reveal a certain message to a certain receiver, and if the check succeeds, then you don't want to. What you can do is secret share this message in the previous layer, and then the parties in the previous layer can decide based on this extra decision that they get whether to forward it or not. So we will use these primitives now to build verifiable secret sharing, and using verifiable secret sharing build the multiplication protocol and eventually the MPC protocol. This is the plan going forward. Do you have any questions about the future messaging? So yeah, just going back to Manoj's question from previously, for example, consider the simplest future messaging problem over here. Now if there are like more than T parties corrupt here, then this is impossible to do. So yeah, MPC is impossible as long as even one of the layers has more than n/3 corruptions.
And the conditional disclosure is allowing the conditions or outcome to
Everyone, yeah, this is needed. I mean, so the condition, the predicate that is going to decide whether or not to forward this message to the designated party has to be broadcasted here. So now let's look at, so we will look at a rather simple and highly inefficient secret sharing scheme. It's called, replicated secret sharing or CNF secret sharing. What is the secret sharing scheme? A T-secure scheme would work as follows. The message you want to secret share would be split into several additive shares, and each set of n-t sized each subset of n-t parties would get one of these additive shares. So this is a valid secret sharing, because if you corrupt only at most t parties, then the complement has a additive secret share that you would miss. And if you have more than t parties, if you are more than t parties, then you have all the sets, so you can recover the message. Now the question is, how do we do verifiable secret sharing in the layered model? So verifiable means that it's a very straightforward functionality. The dealer who is creating the secret share might be corrupt, but still we want to ensure that the secret shares that have been given to the parties, they are valid. If you simply try to do a Shamir secret sharing, then the dealer might send an arbitrary polynomial which is not degree bounded as you want it, for example. So the verifiable secret sharing is an interactive protocol to ensure this part. So here is a way to do verifiable secret sharing. To each set of n-t subset in the output clients, you send an additive secret share. You multicast it. What does multicast mean? That it's like broadcast, but to a specific subset. So to every n-t size subset, you multicast a additive secret sharing of the message. This is going to do CNF VSS by the definition. Is that okay? So how do we do the multicast? Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
How do I? So once I get this identity also,
Yeah.
I'm assuming like that is a secret share.
Yes, this is the secret share. Yeah.
And then your secret share mechanism is basically have an additive secret share.
Yeah, given in this specific manner. Yeah, Shamir is a different secret sharing. This is a different. This is a very strong type of secret sharing, but then the problem is that it's highly inefficient. So the number of shares that you are providing is n choose n minus t. It's exponentially many of these.
So what is the exact reconstruction process here?
Reconstruction.
When there are corruptions,
When there are corruptions, yeah, so the reconstruction process is each share is going to be provided to n minus t parties, and at most t of them would be corrupt, but t is greater than n minus 2t. So now take a majority and this should be sufficient. When you are trying to reconstruct, the question is, some of these people would lie, then what? Yeah. So can you tell me how much time is left? Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, so I will, so let's try to see how we would do multicast. So just to be sure, just to be clear, multicast is, there is a set of parties in the output client that wants this message that the sender has. The guarantee is that the receivers should all receive this message, right? So remember, VSS can be done using multicast. So yeah, this is so how do we build the multicast? We will use an even weaker notion called weak future multicast. Weak future multicast has these extra parties of interest. There is the sender, and these are the receivers of the multicast, the ones in red. And then there are these intermediaries in the layer right next to the sender. There will be n minus t of these intermediaries sitting here in a weak multicast protocol. Now the guarantees of this are the following. First of all the honest parties in the output client, among the output clients, will output the same value. This is required out of a multicast. Secondly, if the sender were honest, then the output of the honest parties is going to coincide with the sender's message. This is also required of the multicast. But then what the difference here is that the security, the privacy of this is kind of limited, in the sense that you would, in a multicast, you would need privacy of the message as long as the sender and the receivers are all honest or uncorrupted. But here you will get privacy only when the sender and all the intermediaries are also honest in addition. But it's not very hard to see how you can use weak future multicast to build multicast. You send the, so if you want to multicast a message, you do additive secret, you build an additive secret sharing and give one of these additive share to each of these subsets, such that you know that at least one of these subset is going to be honest. This gives you the multicast right away once you have this, right? What is this? Yeah, so how do you build this? So how do you build a weak future multicast? This is, I mean, if we don't worry about the layered situation, this is easy to build. The sender sends the message to all the parties in U. Now the parties in U somehow checks that the message that the sender has sent amongst them are all consistent, they're all equal. If if there is a complaint, then you force the sender to broadcast the message to the output clients. And if there is no complaint, then each of these intermediary will privately send the messages to the output clients. Now, of course, if the consistency check fails, even if the sender is, when the sender is honest, of course we get all the output parties to get the correct message. And even if the sender is corrupt, you, because of broadcast, you know that these parties will get the same message. Whereas if all the check succeeds, and even if all this check succeeds and all the intermediaries are actually honest, then you have ensured that the sender has sent the same message to all of them, and this message has been sent to the final output client. But it could be possible that some of these parties are corrupt and they correctly did the verifying part or the consistency check, but then they tell the wrong messages to this party. But you know that a majority of these parties are honest, because n minus 2t is greater than t. So these parties can still recover the message, since they are getting n minus t of these, and you just take the t plus 1 that have been consistent together. So now how do you do it in the layered setting? We can use the tools that we have seen so far. The sender, of course, sends the message to the parties in the layer 1. Now the parties need to verify that the messages are consistent between them. They're going to run a sub protocol that is going to let the parties in the layer 3 learn whether there is a inconsistency. How do you do that? The parties secret share their messages here, and then you do a subtraction and check if it is 0. The output of this computation is broadcasted here, so everybody knows whether it is equal to 0 or not equal to 0. Now if everything is equal to 0, then you don't learn the message, because this has been a secure computation over here, and you know that all these parties have gotten the same message. In that case, they will go to this else part where you privately conveys the message. Otherwise you have a problem. So now you want to somehow make this party broadcast things to these parties when there is an inconsistency. But for this you can do the conditional disclosure that we did previously. I mean, of course both of them are going to be conditionally disclosed one way or the other. For this, the sender is going to cache their message or like store their message amongst these parties, and then if there is an inconsistency, they will be delivered to these parties. So is this part clear? Yeah, so these are like, yeah. So like I was saying, once you have weak future multicast, you can do future multicast. The concrete plan is as follows. The message has been secret shared, additively secret shared into several of these things, one for each set of intermediaries. And you know that if the sender is honest, all these RTs are going to reach these parties correctly. But there is at least one of these sets T that is completely uncorrupted. So that particular additive share would not be revealed to the parties. So this remains secure. and consistency is arranged by the weak multicast and so on.
What's the difference between weak and non-weak?
Yeah, so in the weak, there are the set of intermediaries, and you get security only when the intermediaries are all honest. This one, there is no notion of intermediaries. This is like input and output clients, but since there will be one set of intermediaries that will be surely completely honest. Because at most T parties are corrupted, the complement will be completely honest. So that particular additive share of M will be protected. This ensures the protection of the M itself when the sender and the receivers are all honest. This is what we wanted for multicast. So we using multicast as we saw, we can get layered VSS. So the next part is to move the layered, the multiplication into the layered setting. How much time more do we have? 10 more minutes. Okay, that's great. So this is the multiplication functionality, right? What do we need? The input clients have valid secret sharing of two messages, R and S, and the output clients should get a valid secret sharing of the message R times S. So this is in the standard setting, or like the usual plan for computing this is as follows. You want to secret share the product. So remember that in the secret sharing of R, this involves like several of these R sub T's for each T sized subset, and this would be available with this T set of parties, that is T. We want to somehow secret share each of these RT times ST amongst the output clients. Yeah, sorry, this is a big mistake. So for any T and T prime, we want RT times ST prime to be secret shared. Yeah, this is horrible, but yeah, you need T comma T prime here. Big mistake, but then yeah, everything goes through. Yeah. So you want to secret share every RT times ST amongst the output client. Now you can add them to get the secret share of the summation of RT times ST, and this is a secret sharing of R times S. This is the plan. So now in the non-layered protocol, so at this point we can kind of get an intuition about how to move from a non-layered protocol to layered protocol. It's all the tricks that we saw previously. So in the non-layered protocol, but here there is an extra catch that we need to worry about, but yeah. In the non-layered protocol, how do you do this? For each, it should have been for each T comma T prime, right? We take the set of all parties that hold RT and ST prime simultaneously. There will be at least T plus 1 of these, right? So n minus T intersection n minus T. 2 n minus T sized intersections. So 3T plus 1 minus 2T, like T plus 1. And we will ask every party that holds RT and ST prime to verifiably secret share RT times ST prime. After this, we will somehow check whether all these RT prime, all these purported secret sharing of RT times ST prime, they're all equal without revealing the RT times ST time itself. This is not hard to do. You can do an MPC between every pair and check if the result turns out to be 0. So this doesn't reveal RT times ST itself, it just reveals that RT times ST prime by one party and the other party are equal. That's all this is going to reveal. If this is true, then we will take one of these parties secret sharing as the secret sharing of RT times ST prime, and we'll call it, R times S of T comma T prime in some sense. And if it is false, then we are going to force, then all the parties are going to decide that they are going to reveal RT and ST prime to the output clients. And then given RT and ST prime, you can get a trivial secret sharing of RT times ST prime by just processing. This is not hard to do. Now, if we want to move this to the layered model, there are quite a few issues. I mean, of course, we have seen how to check whether, so of course we can start the same way that they are doing here. Each input client who has RT and ST prime can do a verifiable secret sharing. We know how to do a verifiable secret sharing. To get a verifiable secret sharing of RT times ST prime by a particular party. We can have it done by all the parties. Now these parties, so it can be, this would be done onto a certain layer, right? And this layer can now check whether two of these are equal or not. But now the problem is this, that I cannot choose one of these parties RT times ST and leave it onto a next layer. So the checking would be done in a particular layer, let's say D, and now you need to choose one of these verifiable secret sharing and keep it as the secret sharing, and we need to add it later, right? This has to be done to get the secret sharing of R times S. But this is not easy to do because you have already verifiably secret shared it somewhere and you want to get the same copy in the next layer. This is not good because now the 2T of these things can be corrupted by the adversary, because the adversary can corrupt the first T parties in the first layer where this verifiable secret sharing occurred and in the second layer where this verifiable secret sharing occurred. So here we do something slightly convoluted. What we do is, so there is this one party who's going to be special. I mean, yeah, so there are other things. One more, I mean, just remember there is the if false situation, that is, if you realize that somebody has secret shared it incorrectly, then you want to force RT and ST to be revealed. But this is easy to do with the conditional disclosure that we have previously done. So you can check, you can try to compute the difference between a verifiable secret sharing of two different verifiable secret sharing of RT times ST prime, and if the difference turned out to be non-zero, then you know that somebody has lied somewhere, and then the plan is to reveal RT and ST to the output clients. This can be done easily. The tricky part is to make this special party share its share to the output clients. If everything has worked out here, all the verification has been worked out. So over here what we do is, instead of this special party, instead of secret sharing RT times ST, it's going to secret share additive secret sharing of RT times ST. And these additive secret sharings are going to be used as the additive secret sharing that are used in the CNF part. Yeah, this might be a little tricky. I mean, so the point is that the special party is going to verifiably secret share several values, and these values will be an additive secret sharing of RT times ST prime itself. Now in order to check validity, what you will do is check whether the sum of these is equal to the secret sharing given by every other party. This ensures that it's the same. The special party, even if it is corrupt, it has validly secret shared RT times ST. This is ensured. But now what you are going to do is, the VSS secret sharing itself is going to be simply revealing each of these additive secret sharing to the appropriate subsets in the output clients. I mean, if this is not clear, we can discuss it later. Yeah. So once we have these, it's easy to do the secure function evaluation. We take the first of all the input clients verifiably secret share their input, and then now we go through the circuit computing this function and evaluate the gates in an order. Linear gates, once we have the verifiable secret sharing of the wires, linear gates are easy to compute. This can be done non-interactively. Multiplication gates, we have the multiplication protocol that we just saw. Now we have to keep an invariant in this, that is, when we are ready to, when we want to evaluate this gate, we want the wires of the input wires of that gate both available in the same layer. That's when we can do the computation, even the linear and the multiplication. In order to do this, you might need to move the shares from a layer to a later layer. This is like you want to move it. Of course, you cannot duplicate it because it will corrupt enough parties to break it. So you have to reshare, and reshare is easy to do. It's just multiplication with 1. And once the output wire has been computed, it can be reconstructed at the output client, and this finishes the protocol. So using the CNF secret sharing, we get an exponentially large communication protocol which computes any function that we want. But using very similar tricks, but with slightly more complexity in the protocol, but the tricks that we use is more or less the same. You can replace the CNF VSS with the Shamir secret sharing, and you get an efficient protocol that is efficient in the number of gates of the circuit and the number of parties. So yeah, this is an extra observation that if you want to settle for computational security, then CNF secret sharing can be made much more efficient. So there are certain cases, like for example, the circuit is extremely large in comparison with the number of parties. In this situation, this protocol is more efficient than this protocol in the computational regime, because you can shrink this protocol by a lot in the computational regime. So yeah, to summarize, we saw the definition of layered MPC. So it has restricted interaction patterns and like the extremely mobile adversary. And in this model, we saw the construction of an MPC in the CNF VSS highly inefficient construction using CNF VSS secret sharing. And the construction is the same kind of. Once you do this construction, it's easy to see how to go ahead and do this kind of construction. This involves moving the protocols in the standard domain in a safe way to the layered model. And this is given in the paper. And the future work involves maybe coming up with a compiler that can take any protocol in the standard model and converting it into the layered model. And a more important question is, so we have been looking at perfectly secure. Statistically secure is extremely well motivated, and yeah, how do we come up with, whether it is possible even to come up with statistically secure protocols when t is less than n/2 in this model? This is an open question. When there is n/2, yeah, you can do it. So one of the most natural thing to try, and interestingly doesn't work, is to, so that like I said, in the YOSO model there has been constructions of statistically secure protocol, but it turns out that there are very subtle differences in the YOSO model that makes it impossible to port the protocols in the YOSO model to the layered MPC model. Yeah. So one natural way to get statistically secure layered MPC is to port this thing instead of trying to port from the standard, which will be like farther than this.
So there is a compiler from standard to YOSO.
It's not a compiler. It's more like a, yeah, it's a concrete construction. Yeah. It's using Rabin Benyo. Yeah.
So YOSO they're trying to do some more thing, but they're I think orthogonal, right?
Yeah, so there is this whole which is not really mentioned in this particular paper, but there is a lot to be done to ensure that there are at most T corruptions in every committee.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
Also, like they care about anonymity, right? They have sort of sent to some role, somebody in the future.
Yeah. But this is in some sense done to ensure that there are at most T parties corrupt in each committee, right? Yeah, because so all that the adversary can do is like there's this big pool of parties in the blockchain, and the adversary can go and corrupt at n/3 parties over there. But then they should look random over here so that in each committee there are only n/3 parties corrupt. This, but we are, yeah. This is orthogonal, and it turns out, even though this is described in some vague sense in the first paper introducing it, they don't get into this detail, the whole anonymous communication part. I think this would be like anonymous messaging in many ways, yeah. But there is also going to be an extra committee standing outside choosing which committee to be the. Yeah. This I don't know. This is an interesting question, and
What is the subtlety that prevents the user to
yeah, the subtlety is kind of like, so over here, this committee can speak with these two committees, and you can make this committee speak first and then this committee speaks. This cannot be done in a very straightforward way. This is like one of the issues.
So you're saying you cannot layer the communication?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, this is one of them. Yes, this is a major bottleneck. So as a result of this,
One layer that you
yeah.
have your vectors.
So one natural thing that you can do is like stack it up into a path and have future messaging and so on to send it. I can't quite remember what the issue was, but this is going to create a problem. So what this is,
For
yeah.
you end up within the same layer, you need two subsets.
That's not a good idea, because then suddenly you can corrupt all the parties in this committee. This is not a good idea. Yeah. But what you can do is like stack them up in like this, but have this committee speak. So this committee, suppose in the YOSO, this committee comes before this committee in terms of speaking. Then keep this committee before this committee in the path, and then that committee sends whatever it wants to send using future messaging potentially. But this is not great. I mean, yeah, I need to remember what the subtlety was. It's been some time since I thought about it, but yeah.
So in the user model, the other way, then you're saying from one layer you can directly communicate to a future layer, as in the original user model.
Yeah.
You don't have that, but you could implement it using this future messaging.
No, over here also.
But in user it is
Yeah. You can. So this committee can speak to this committee. There's nothing stopping it from doing this. Yeah.
But in your case, you have an implementation of that.
Yeah, we have an implementation of that, but there are. I mean, the main problem is that it's not one committee, active at any point of time, as in committee who has not spoken at a particular point of time. As a result, they can decide who is going to speak first and so on, based on certain decisions. In YOSO, because the only constraint is that these committees, if one speaks at some point of time, which it can do to several committees, but after that it's done.
It's like looking at its message and at some point speaking.
Yeah, this can be done. Yeah. Yes, but I am pretty sure it's not hard to do how to port this. So one thing that we observed was that future broadcast, if we want to do in the statistical setting in the layered MPC, then you need to have these strange committees in the middle that are like useless. It's just forwarding things. I mean, it's not useless exactly. This committee and the next committee would have the same view, in some sense. I mean, but yeah, this is. I can describe it in some detail. Yeah.
Alright, thanks. I guess we are out of time unless somebody still have
Okay.
You can ask me.
So Rajiv is on call. I mean, Rajiv and Tanvi are on call. Do you have any questions? I see. There is a chat message. Sorry, I lost audio. Okay. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you for showing up. Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.